Here we are in session 4. We are way past our halfway point now for small groups. Hard to believe that just a little while ago there were no really small groups going at Willow Lake. We had one or two off out on their own kind of in the wilderness, and now we have a focused small group ministry at Willow Lake. And did you know right now we have 48 active adults in small group ministry, and we have another 6 that are waiting to get involved or haven't been able to get involved like they were hoping to yet. So soon enough we could have 54 people participating in small groups, and that is really amazing. I was aiming for 30 or somewhere around there. I thought that'd be really good if we had 30 people involved in small groups, and right now we are at 48 people. I want to thank you, and I want to encourage you. Keep going and keep doing what you're doing. This is just the beginning. Truth be told, it's really easy to get 50 of you all worked up and excited about this and get you in to small groups. The big test is a year from now. How many people are actively involved in small groups? And my hope and prayer is that we had 96 people a year from now involved, and the ministry has doubled. Because that doesn't mean then that we're doubling our small group ministry. What it means is that we are doubling the kingdom of heaven right here at Willow Lake. What this is all about, again, is becoming disciples of Jesus, growing in our faith, and becoming more and more passionate about our faith. And this week we're going to talk about the final sermon in the sermon series on spiritual disciplines. And of course, the disciplines all about becoming a disciple, a better and better disciple of Jesus, following after him. And so we wrapped things up just before Lent began with a sermon on fasting, and it was fitting. That final Sunday in the series was also the Sunday before Ash Wednesday and the beginning of Lent. Lent, of course, an entire season of the church calendar based around fasting. And so we looked at fasting as a spiritual discipline, and one of the things that really struck me that week was how people understood that this was a hard thing. And that's kind of the point about fasting, and something that we're going to talk about in a little while in our small group discussion. When we look at Jesus beginning his ministry, he goes out to the desert and he fasts for 40 days without food. Some say he even went without water. Whatever he did during that fast, he was obviously in a weakened state. Fasting is very, very difficult. In fact, you want to find out just how weak you are? Try fasting, and 4 hours into it, you'll discover just how truly weak you are. So Jesus did it for 40 days. And along comes Satan in the desert to tempt Jesus. And the devil notices that Jesus is at his weakest. And so the devil comes along, and how does he tempt Jesus first? But with food. He tempts him in his weakness. And he comes and he says, if you're the Son of God, take these stones and turn them into loaves of bread. Feed yourself. Come on. It's okay. And can't you just hear that whispering into Jesus' ear? That sly little lie. You know it's okay. Just do it. And we can all relate to temptation like that. And how difficult that must have been after so long without food. And that temptation to just turn those stones into bread and to just eat finally and make himself physically better. But when the devil thinks Jesus is at his weakest, remember Dallas Willard said Jesus was actually at his strongest. And I think Dallas Willard is right. In just a little while, we're going to look at that passage, but we're also going to look at how Jesus was at his strongest. And he was at his strongest, of course, because not only had he gone 40 days without food, but he had spent 40 days communing with God. And again, like I mentioned, start a fast, you'll find out quickly how weak you really are. And that's the great thing about fasting, is immediately you have to rely on God to carry you through. So part of that discussion is going to come up right now. I'm going to put the questions up on the screen for us here, and also the passages. We're going to read a couple passages together. First passage I want you to read together is Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 1 through 5. That's the passage that Jesus quotes to Satan in in resisting the temptation. So read that passage together, and then you'll read the passage of Jesus first being tempted in the wilderness, Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. Read that together, and then these questions you are going to talk about together in your groups. Question number 1. When you're weak, when you're angry, when you're frustrated, where do you turn? Do you turn to food? Do you turn to money? Some people go out and buy things to help them feel better. Do you turn to anger, yelling? Do you turn to drugs or alcohol, pornography? A lot of people, when they're faced with a temptation or faced with anger or all sorts of emotions, now turn to pornography. Maybe you're not at a state in small group life where you feel comfortable sharing that yet. That's fine. You don't have to yet. But talk about that. What things do you usually turn to when you're facing temptation? Or what temptation usually are you dealing with and struggling with? Question number 2 with that, what is temptation like for you and how do you handle it? And then a question playing off of that, not only how do you handle temptation now in your life, but how do you hope to handle temptation? That's a big one. And as discussed before, one of the amazing things about fasting is that it humbles us quickly. And I want you to discuss that in your group. What does humility look like to you? And in a spiritual life, what does that look like to you? What things come to mind? Why might that be important to be humble in our walk with God and as disciples of Jesus and so on? Play off of that question. And then finally, wrapping things up about the spiritual disciplines. What about the spiritual disciplines speaks to you? That is maybe what has really challenged you through this sermon series? What has really spoke to you? What are you hoping to do out of these spiritual disciplines? What are 1 or 2 that you're really hoping to apply to your life, and how might you handle that? So go ahead, discuss that. You can pause here, and then when you're done, push play, and we'll wrap things up. So we're talking there about what temptation looks like for us, and how you handle temptation and how you hope you might handle temptation. Let's face it, we can all get better at handling temptation. And I hope in that discussion, something really important came up amongst you, and that is an important piece or pieces, and they're sitting all around you. That as you fight to become a disciple of Jesus and know him more and more and to grow in your faith more and more, and as you deal with temptation, that you might turn to these people around you to help you in that struggle. That's part of the point of small groups, is that we support one another in our faith walks and our journey with Christ, that we can come to one another and share our struggles, that we can be real with one another about our faith and our temptations, and that we can pray for one another and walk through life together, carrying these burdens with one another. So that's going to wrap it up for this discussion and wrap it up on the small group discussions and the spiritual disciplines. But you'll head into prayer time now as groups. And hopefully maybe you have even extra time to pray together this week. And so I would challenge you to be honest with one another, not just in a superficial way where you might want prayer, but really truthfully take time to be authentic and transparent with people. Where are you struggling in life right now? Where are you struggling in your faith? And how might they pray for you? How might they help you? How might your brothers and sisters carry that burden with you?